Hello and welcome to lesson 1 of week 6. In this lesson, we are going to look at the different CSS properties that we can apply to images to style an image, to make it responsive and to improve the user experience on a web page when images are involved. So we have different properties that we can use to control the size, the shape, border, the filters, the alignment, and also different effects of images. I have some images on the web page and we are going to work with these images. Take note that we are not going into advanced topics until an advanced course. If you take the HTML, CSS and JavaScript course, we are going to look at the different image galleries and all of those kind of effects, but we are going to look at enough for you to know what exists in CSS and how you can style images in its basic form. On my HTML file here, I have included several images and we are going to illustrate these image properties using this image. The first thing we are going to look at is the height and width property to be applied to the image. The reason we must set the width and the height is for web performance. Whenever you set the height and the width, it allows the browser to know in advance the space to reserve and now prevents the page from flickering while the image loads. It also improves the page stability and it affects the search engine optimization positively by speeding up the load time of the page and improving its cumulative layout shift score. So we are going to specify the height and width for the image tag. Now it is better practice to maintain the aspect ratio by specifying only one property, either the height or the width. We want to specify the width of this image to be 300 pixels and then we'll set the height to auto. Now this will not make the image responsive, but it's going to give us the size that we specified for the image. Now because we want the width of 300 pixels, when we have a screen that is smaller than the width, then we're going to have horizontal scroll bar. What you do instead for responsive image is to use the max width property and you set the value to, if you want it to be max width, should be 100% or 80%, which means that it will take the full width of the screen if it's larger than the screen, and if it's smaller it will resize to fit the width of the smaller screen. So the image will be on your screen without horizontal scroll bars. And so when I refresh this, we'll see the images to the maximum width, and I don't have horizontal scroll bars for images like this that are large. It crops enough to reach the width of it. Now we know that the default display of image is inline, and so it doesn't take up the full width of the row that is assigned. It just takes as much space as is needed and continue the next image beside the image listed. So for responsive image styling, we use max width property. So the height will adjust automatically to maintain the image aspect ratio. So we can create a container for our image. We have the div tag surrounding this image. Let's say we have a div here and let's put a border here to be, let's say 2px, let's say 2px solid, and let's put a color, let's put gold, okay, for the div. And let's say the container has a width of, let's say 500 pixels, and let's say it has a height, let's say the height to be auto, or we'll just set a height, let's set the width to be 100% and let's set the height to be 250 pixels, and also we want to put a property we call object fit. Now we're going to look at object fit in better detail soon, but object fit property makes the image to fill the container without distortion when the value is covered, so it will crop every excess part if it's needed. And then let's use the border radius and let's specify a value for it. Let's say 10 pixels, 25 pixels, like this. So now we have this for the div tag. We have a div tag here. Let's refresh our page to see. We have it applied, so we can see that this overflows the container because of the height of the container. The height here we put to 50 pixels. When we set the height to auto and we refresh, we now have everything within the container. So you see why auto is the best than having a fixed height. So the object fit helps us to control how image fits inside a specified container. Alright, there are different values for the object fit properties, and let's look at the different values that it comes with. We have fill, which is the default. We can change this value to contain, and when we refresh you see that it still contains the image. Let's say we left the height to be 250 pixels, so we can see the effects of the different values, 250 pixels, and we refresh here to see that now it's overflowing that container. When we change it to cover like we've seen before, it still overflows the container. When we put it to none and we refresh, we don't have any value, but when we change it to scale down and we refresh, you can see that it remains the same, but because we have a fixed height that we have. there. We can determine the position of the image within the container by adding the object position property here. So I put object position and I put, let's say I want it center top, and I have the width of this. Let's say we want it center top. I have the height here set back to auto. Let's put the object fit and the position for the image tag, and I'll change this to cover, and I'll comment this out, and let's illustrate the object fit here. So now we have this, and the container for this image is the body element, and we specify this value for the object fit and the object position. Let's use the width instead of the max width so we can see this effect. Let's say this is 250 pixels and the height here is, we'll leave it as auto, and then when I refresh now, we will see the images taking exactly the width that we specified. But if we specify a particular height of, saying the height is 150 pixels, then we'll have everything of the same height on the page. So you can see how you can adjust your images with the width and height property. But when we have this, we always want to have the aspect ratio property because we want to maintain consistent image proportion responsively. And so if I specify the aspect ratio here and I put, let's say 16/9, which is a popular aspect ratio, we might not see any change in this, but what it does for us is it will maintain the image proportion responsively. And this is great when you want to create video thumbnails, you want to create banners and photo galleries, and we'll see that in an advanced course. But when you refer to your lesson resource, you'll see an example of a complete responsive image. And we have said previously that the start of responsiveness is for you to change the box sizing property and the value of border box for all elements by using the asterisk sign. So we'll say box sizing and change this to border box like this. Then you can now start adding image. Let's say we wanted to make this an image gallery. We can create a style called gallery. Let's say gallery like this, and we want to specify the display. I'll put the grid value for the display property, and we have the grid template volumes property. I want this to repeat and we want it to auto fit. So you see this in an advanced course. We want the min max to be 250 pixels and we want it to be 1 FR like this. We also want to set the gap to be 15 pixels. We want to set the padding to be 20 pixels. So we'll see this in our advanced HTML, CSS, JavaScript course. So for a style that has the class attribute with the value of gallery, so we want any image in this container to have, so for now let's change the class here to be gallery here, and here we'll come here to say we want to make the width of this image to be 100%. We want to make the height to be 250 pixels. We want to make the object fit property to be cover. We want to put a border radius, or let's put it 10 pixels on all sides, and then we also want to have a transition property. So we'll look at transition in an advanced course where we'll see how we can transform, we can actually do some animation, but I'm going to use it now to show you how we can make image responsive with CSS. So you have all of this code in your lesson resource, and if you enroll for the HTML, CSS and JavaScript course, we're going to discuss all of these in details in preparation for your transition to becoming a full stack front-end developer. Now we have the gallery, and we want when this image is hovered, because we did the pseudo class in last week's lesson, so we want when the image within the container is hovered, we want it to transform, and we want the transform to be, let's use scale and let's change it to 1.05, and then when we want to do media queries, we use add media, and this is going to be in the media query lesson in the advanced course. We set the max width for this screen size to be 600 pixels, and we want to change the height if the screen is that size. So we'll say .gallery image, and we'll change the height to be 180 pixels like this. Let's use this and see how it is on the web page. So we have the gallery already created. You see how we put the border radius for the images, and when we hover, we have the transform that we want here. So you can see how we did the style of the image, and so we can even have more animation where it scrolls for a particular time and switches to the next gallery, and you will learn all of this in an advanced course. So this example uses CSS grid, and as we look at responsive image in week 7, you will know what the grid is for layout. And what we do is automatically adjust the number of images per row based on the size that we specified, and it keeps the images proportional and responsive across screen sizes. So we can decide to add box, shadow, border radius, and other border properties if we want to the image. So another property that we have not looked at is the opacity property, where we can control the transparency of an image. We can come here to the images in this to set an opacity property, and we set the value to, so when we have 0 it is fully transparent, when we have 1 it is fully opaque. So we put value between 0 and 1. The closer it is to 0, the more transparent. The closer it is to 1, the more you get the full opaque image. So let's say we want it to be 0.7 for instance. This will reduce how bright, it will reduce the opacity, so it will see it a little transparent here. So you see how a little transparent it is because we use the opacity property and we set the value. So the value will range from 0.0 to 1.0. You can put any value between 0 and 1. When we want to have like when it hovers, we want it darker, we can add the hover effect here and say whenever we hover this image, when it transforms, we should have the opacity of 1. So I want you to use your imagination, use all of the CSS properties you've learned, apply any property and value to a lot of images, and so when I hover now, you see the full thickness. So when it's looking transparent and you hover, you have it brighter. Alright, so these are the different effects you can have, not only for images. When you have your navigation bar, you can apply this. We have a filter property that we use to apply predefined visual effects, and this comes like functions where we can put the blur, the brightness, the contrast, and so on. So when we want to apply those visual effects, we use the filter property, and let's try that. Let's say let's put it on the image here. We put the filter property here, and let's put the value to be grayscale, and let's say we want it 100% grayscale. So this will give us our image in black and white instead of colored image like this. So we see it black and white. Okay, so this is how we apply the filter. If we want a contrast, let's say we can add the value here should be contrast 150. Let's put a contrast, and let's put it to be like 150%. And when I refresh, we'll see the contrast as we hover around this image. Right. If I want this to have maybe a saturation of 200%, so we can put saturate, and I'll change this to 200%. And when I refresh the saturation, now we can see how it's changed to the saturation. So when you play around with this, you see what effects the different predefined effects are. So let's put sepia, and we'll set this to, let's say, 60%. And when I refresh here, I'll see how it is. So you can see how we're changing the visual effect. We can use the filter property and have several multiple filters. So let's say I want a brightness of 110% for instance. I want a contrast of 120% for instance, and I want the saturation to be 150%. So I can do it like this and put all in one definition like this, and when I refresh, we'll find all of them apply at once, and when we hover, we see this. So we have seen how we use these different properties to adjust images, to apply visual effects to images. We want to look at how we can create like a newspaper article where we have images and we have text floating around these images, and we are going to do this in the next lesson.